Thank you for joining us today and welcome back to WAMS Webinar Wednesdays. Today I'm joined by Kathleen Kvitek, Director of Training at WAMS, and Eric Crowther, owner of Crowther Macro Systems. On the agenda for today, we will have a quick little intro to macros by Kathleen. Then Eric will explain to us why CCC Macro Pro is so great. Then we will have a demo of the system and kind of just a quick explanation as to how to get started. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, I'll share just a little bit about us. We have been around since '74. We work with small businesses and law firms. We do specialize in IT for the legal industry. We keep our agreements friendly and always approach contracts with a win-win philosophy. Our team is comprised of experts with certifications in every platform we work with, and as always, WAMS is dedicated to the success of our clients. We measure our success by how well we take care of our clients. Now, before we get started, please send all questions to info@wamsinc.com. That's info@wamsinc.com. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen to tell us a little about why macros help you to work smarter, not harder.
Hi, everybody. So in case you have not heard of macros created for Microsoft Word, I want to explain to you a little bit about just what they are and why it's worth it to consider for your business. So starting off, I'm just going to be honest here, Microsoft Word is not necessarily the most intuitive application. I think it requires quite a bit of training to become an expert and a lot of time put into it. However, if you are needing to produce complicated documents, legal pleadings, you work with agreements, with extensive outline numbering schemes, having a macro system that takes features in Microsoft Word and makes them easier for you to use and consistent is something that can really help any company, not just law firms. And that's exactly what we're going to be presenting to you today. So instead of using a button and then that belongs to Microsoft Word and then trying to work out all the features and make it work for you each and every time you open a document, if you have a macro system with templates, you can click a button and you have a much easier to use interface that will make producing documents in Microsoft Word much easier. So I'm going to turn this right over to Eric, who's going to introduce himself, his company, his history, and then he'll be giving you a demo, and I'll jump back in and do a little bit of some demoing myself.
Hi, this is Eric Crowther. So yeah, I'm the owner of Crowther Macro Systems. I established the company back in 1991 after working at a law firm in Century City in Los Angeles for 7 years. At the law firm in the 1980s, where we used, well, this dates me, but we used WordPerfect 5.1 for DOS initially, I wound up developing macros to automate the assembly of documents in WordPerfect at that time, especially for litigation in California, but also for other purposes. And I wore a variety of hats at that firm, you know, IT related functions, basically. So what happened was that after developing a whole set of macros to automate the work at my firm, other firms contacted me and asked me if I could do the same for them. And long story short, it turned into a business. So in 1991, I left my firm and began offering that service of providing macros and customizing them to other law firms in the community. And well, it's been a lot of years since 1991. So in that time, very gradually, I've grown this company. We're still very small, just a few developers, but basically been dedicated for what now adds up to about 28, 29 years to providing macros and customization of those macros and support to law firms to help them do their work as efficiently as possible when drafting documents and formatting documents in Microsoft Word. I think that the greatest strengths we have in our product and our service are the ones listed kind of in bullet points on this screen. We customize our solution, our templates, our macros, the options, the features, the interface. We customize it extensively for each firm based on each law firm's specific requirements or preferences. And so we spend quite a bit of time collecting information, examining the documents a firm creates, how they like to format them, how they like to assemble them, going over the features of our system and making sure that we tailor those features and the interface to work as best possible for each firm individually. We also are, probably because we are a small company, we're extremely responsive. We have a relatively informal support mechanism where our clients just send an email to our support account and we're all notified. All of the developers on my team, just a few of us, right? We're notified immediately and we respond very quickly, and all of our clients would tell you that. So because we're small, I guess, and because we work very closely with each client and provide a very customized solution, we're able to provide a very rapid and effective response and jump right in and take care of things for clients. So that's a big plus for us and for our company, since I'm plugging myself here. The tools we provide, the features we provide, are destined not just to help you automate assembling documents like letters and pleadings and other types of documents, but also we provide a bunch of tools, which I'll show you briefly, or Kathleen will show you, to help you format the content of your documents as efficiently as possible. So it's about creating documents, it's about inserting certain structures into documents, and about formatting the paragraphs and the headings. Hand in hand with that is a set of tools designed around Word's outline numbering system that help automate and make much easier applying numbering to headings and paragraphs, and then eventually building tables of contents and the like. Now, with regard to litigation, I mentioned that back at my law firm in the 1980s, I developed a lot of macros, particularly for litigation in California. And we have, by virtue of that, really, we have a very comprehensive set of features for pleadings and litigation. It's not just in California anymore. We now have firms with offices all over the country and even a few other countries where we've provided litigation tools and macros. And then finally, I think one key element of our system that distinguishes us from a lot of other systems is that hand in hand with providing you with tools to format the contents of your documents, styles and numbering and other tools like that, we provide some document cleanup tools that are meant to help firms start to adopt our formatting mechanisms, our formatting features in their documents. And so we've automated the process of, let's say, converting or cleaning up certain elements of documents when you adopt our system and when you receive documents from other people outside your firm and want to make them conform with the formatting that we're providing. So that's really, in a nutshell, what we're about and how we do what we do. So next, what I'd like to do is show you around our product a bit. Okay, so now I'm showing you my Microsoft Word screen. And we have our product built into Word here so that we can show you around. And you'll notice it right away, because if you look at the top of the window on the Home tab in Word, we've taken over a big part of the Home tab. The first thing I want to tell you about that is that we have a lot of features, and therefore we lob a lot of buttons and drop downs into the ribbon. But we're very flexible about just where and how to arrange them. So in our demo right now, you'll see that our features take a very prominent position. The first group in the Home tab is the native Word clipboard group. So those are just Word features, right? Cut, copy, paste, and Format Painter. But that group is followed by 3 CCC groups. So the CCC Macro Pro Group, that's the name of our product, where the macro menus and macro buttons are located. A CCC numbering group, which has all of our numbering tools to do multi-level outline numbering of headings or paragraphs. And a third group called CCC Styles, which has menus and drop-downs that let you select styles to help you very quickly format paragraphs and headings in a document. So those 3 groups take up a lot of space. And we put them in a prominent position, which a lot of our clients like, because they basically, when they adopt our system, they start using those features all day long, and they want them to take over the world in a way. But we do have firms who sometimes ask us to move our groups to the other end of the ribbon so that it doesn't look like we've taken over so much or whatever. We're quite flexible actually about how we arrange things, as long as it makes sense to you and to us. In our demo though, that's where they sit. And so following the 3 CCC groups, you're going to see the native word font group with all the buttons you normally see relating to font and font attributes, the paragraph group. We've rearranged the paragraph group a little bit, but largely it's just native word paragraph formatting features. We've taken over and added some of our features to a couple of buttons there just to make them convenient, but all of the features you would have in native word are available there. And then the editing group, which is the last very standard word group. Everything after that, well, those are sort of optional features that people have or don't have. So the native word features that are in the Home tab are still there. The only exception is a group called Quick Styles, and that's because part of the CCC Macro Pro system is our own CCC Styles system, which is really an alternative to using Word's Quick Styles group, even though you could have both side by side. Now, let me show you around the features that are up there. Essentially, the macros themselves, which are the programs that automate assembling documents or inserting things or carrying out functions in documents, those are all in the CCC Macro Pro Group for the most part, and they're organized into menus. There's a main macro menu, which is this blue and white M button, and it has a drop down underneath it that you can drop down with your mouse to select the most commonly used macros: letter, memo, fax cover sheet, transmittal. Those are the correspondence templates or macros. There's a macro to update a correspondence document once you've created one. You know, maybe you want to update the letterhead or the author. And then there are a few macros relating to envelopes and labels. You can also click on the blue and white M and bring up a larger version of the menu. This has all the buttons in it that are available in this area. And it includes the same macros we just saw in that drop-down list. So letter, memo, fax, envelopes, etc. But it also includes additional features that are available to you. So sometimes you go to this menu to get the full set of features, and the drop-down is used just for, let's say, the most frequently used features. And we can arrange these buttons anywhere we want, right? We can put any options we like into the drop-down menu for a particular firm if you want a different feature here. So that's the main macro menu, and obviously it's focused on correspondence and envelopes and labels, that type of document, as well as miscellaneous macros. There's also a separate litigation menu. It has its own drop-down, and the first option there is to create a pleading, so that's where you start usually, and then additional options to perform other functions that relate to pleadings. But there's also the big L, the red L button, and if you click on that, you get a much larger version of this menu. And actually, we have 2 different versions of this menu. This one is oriented around firms located in California or who practice principally in California. And so we've kind of just arranged the buttons in a way that's suitable to firms that are focused more on California or, say, West Coast pleadings. But we have another version of it that we use for firms that are national and have offices all over the country and are not necessarily focused on California. But the features that we provide in those 2 different versions of this menu are largely similar. It's just the national firm menu gives you additional options that you can select for specific states or courts that this menu doesn't make clearly visible up front. So depending on your firm, we might adopt one version or another of this menu, but it would look a lot like this regardless, right? And that's the main litigation menu. And those 2 menus, the macro menu, either the drop-down or the bigger one, the litigation menu drop-down or the large version that you get with the L button, that's the heart of our system. That's where you go to run macros that we've provided that step you through creating letters and pleadings and documents like that. There's a third large button here though, but it's a little bit different. The forms menu brings up a menu that looks something like this. And this is a place where your firm can organize your own forms. So if you have, let's say, office forms, which is the first category on this list, like a check request, a timesheet, an expense reimbursement form, and so forth, you can place your forms in a folder and they'll show up on this menu. You can also have form letters, and you can categorize them into subcategories, right? You can have pleadings, you can have transactional documents. Frankly, you can have anything you like. Every firm has its own categories, which are totally customizable, and its own forms. And the forms can be automated to a certain extent. Like we provide documentation relating to this forms menu that tells you how to add your forms to it, and also how to build simple prompts into the forms, and how to tie the letter forms and the pleading forms into our macros. And it's all without any programming on your part, that your firm can manage its own content that appears in the forms menu for that purpose. So the forms menu is different because the content and the specific options you get there come from you, not from us, but we do provide functionality that you would use if you're adopting the forms menu and building your forms into it. All of the smaller buttons that you see here in this group are just shortcuts to individual features. So there's a drop down to insert symbols into a document, right? There's a little red paste button to paste text unformatted. There's the button up in the upper right, for example, to delete a section or a section break. And it's really helpful because it can remove a section from a document or delete a section break without disturbing the formatting of other sections, which is something that happens to people in Word. So we do have a variety of tools built into this whole CCC Macro Pro Group that are organized in this way, and we're pretty flexible about what we put where for each firm. But overall, it would look like this. Now, if you want to run a macro, you would go to any of these menus. For example, I drop down the macro menu, and I could run the letter macro. And when I run the letter macro, because it's a correspondence macro, it starts by asking me to select the author of this letter. This is a personal author list. That means that each person at your firm can choose to add names with these buttons down here, or delete a name from the master database in their own author list. That way, if you're somebody who only does letters for yourself, or if you have 2 or 3 people that you frequently select as authors, you can add those people to your list and not see the entire firm list all at once, unless you prefer to do that. And this is sort of an optional way to arrange things in our system, but that's what this is about. There is an option to skip my list and select from the firm list in case I want to choose somebody that's not on my list. So you always have access to what you need. In any event, all you do here is select the author and click OK. And then we display a window where we prompt you for the information that goes into the document, right? So we're creating a letter and we want to know, which office to use for the letterhead, right? So you can select any office you like, whether to insert electronic letterhead, the date, whether to use an automatic date field. So these kinds of options you see here, well, they vary from one firm to another. For example, if your firm only has one office, we're not going to display a drop-down. Why ask you to choose when there's only one, right? We won't even show that. Or if you only have electronic letterhead and you don't have any printed stationery, then we're not going to bother to show you a checkbox. So we do alter this arrangement for each firm. That's part of the customization process. But this is a typical example of what the letter macro could look like. And you'll notice that there are options here to insert a confidentiality phrase, a delivery phrase, the recipient name and address data, right? Array line down here near the bottom, and a dear line. The fact is, you don't have to fill out anything you don't want to. In other words, if I just want to get a letter on the screen, but I don't want to fill all this stuff out, I could just click OK, and the macro will build me a letter. It'll be pretty empty, but it'll build it for me. But I might want to at least put in, for example, the names of the recipients to the letter. And you can just start typing and add a recipient, right? I could fill all this information out, and I could add Joe Smith as a recipient, which would show up here on the right-hand side for this letter. But we also tie our macros into Outlook or possibly other databases if your firm has a different contact database. So for example, instead of typing the information in, which you don't really want to watch me do, you could select people from your Outlook contacts. And when I click on the Outlook button, what we're doing is displaying an entirely separate window to search for people by name. And it defaults to search by last name but you could search by first name, company name, or categories, right? Now, this might look different if we're integrating it with a different contact database, but Outlook is built into Office, so this is kind of our default for demonstrations. And all I have to do here is type in a name like Jones and press enter or click the search button, and it finds anybody in my contact folder. Now, you can even search other contact folders. So up at the top here, you notice that it has a search folders list, and there's an add button and a remove button. I'll just, in a nutshell, you can add any folder that you can get to in Outlook. So if you go to Outlook and you see a contact folder, whether it's your own or another user's contacts or possibly a firm shared public contacts folder, you can add any of those folders to your search window and they'll stay there. And then from now on, you can search any folders you like. But in this demo, I'm just searching my demo contacts folder in Outlook. So what happened when I typed Jones and pressed enter is that it found 2 people, and it shows me for Mary Jones, the first person, it shows me her details down below. In fact, Mary has a business address, but she also has a home address. So I can choose which address to use for this letter. And I'll choose the business address and add her as a recipient. Now, I can go back up here and do another search and find other people and add another person, like this John Winters fellow, as another recipient, or select a name and add them as a CC or a BCC. And you're building a list of recipients here. When you click OK after doing all of this, you're back in the letter window, and the 3 people I selected are now sitting here on the right-hand side in a running list of recipients. You can still manually type in names and addresses if you want to, right? Now, below that, there's a prompt for client matter number and then the ray line. And the reason that that prompt is there for the matter number, it's not necessarily that you put the client matter number or the file number, whatever you call it at your firm, into the letter, but we can automatically store ray lines under numbers. So if you type a client number and then a matter number or whatever it looks like at your firm, it might automatically call up a standard ray line for that matter. So if you have matters where the letters often have the case name and the case number for litigation, or just a standard ray line describing the matter that's used in a lot of your letters, you have the ability to store that information under the matter number. Now, there are a lot of other details here, but I'm just trying to give you an overview of what our macros are like and explain all of these details here to a certain extent. So the last thing I'll do, just to illustrate, is I'll decide that I'm going to go back up here to confidentiality and put something like attorney-client privilege on my letter. Everything you see here is customizable for your firm. We can customize the list of options that appear when you drop things down. We can customize all the prompts that come up. So everything would be adapted to whatever you do at your firm, right? I'm also going to choose a delivery phrase just to illustrate that. So let's say that the letter is going by email, or maybe email combined with another method like US mail or fax. And then sometimes the prompts change based on choices you make. But the bottom line is you can choose as much of this stuff as you like before you click OK. And then when you click OK, the macro is going to assemble a letter, and you'll see it show up on the screen. And then it stops partway through the process just to prompt you for information for the signature block, right? So it has the closing, which typically is defaulted based on the author you selected. It offers an option to insert a scanned electronic signature for that author, which is an optional feature that your firm can adopt. And then other very standard elements of a signature block, like the author typist initials, if you do that, an enclosure phrase, CCs, BCCs, right? So once you fill this out and click OK, then the macro's finally done. Now I have a letter that I can type into. Now, it did stop with this prompt here, asking me if I want to create a fax cover sheet, but that's only because I told it that the letter was going by email and fax, right up here. So I could say yes, and it would build me a fax sheet with the same information, or I could just say no and stay in the letter and leave it at that. So for right now, I'll keep it short. And now I'm at the point where I can type the letter. So you'll see a bunch of text show up just all of a sudden like that. And I'm hitting a keystroke that produces text for demonstrations. So you'll see me do this a few times today. And the bottom line is you type your letter, and that's it. Now, if we go to the top of the letter, we have kind of an old-fashioned style, traditional letterhead up here with the firm name and address. And we have some author data on the right-hand side. And then, of course, the body of the letter has the date and the confidentiality and the delivery phrase, and my recipients who are in a 2-column table because we chose to put them side by side, which we could do for you, and so forth. So you see all these elements that got plugged in by the macro, right? On the second page, you see the header and the signature block. Now, one thing you should know about CCC Macro Pro is that when we assemble a document, we don't embed anywhere in the body of the document any hidden codes like bookmarks or codes or controls. This is all just text with formatting. So there's a date that's using a date style that we applied, but that just means that it's formatted to be centered with some space after it. There's a confidentiality phrase, and we did apply a style to format that, but that just means that we applied, bold and all caps as the formatting for it. So everything has formatting on it, but nothing prevents you from typing anywhere you'd like. You can go over here and change the date if you like, and it's no problem to do that. You can change this phrase or this phrase down here. If you decide that it's going to go by some other means, you could change it. So you can type anywhere you like, and you don't have to worry about messing things up. There's nothing hidden in this document. And I'm saying that because some systems do adopt something called content controls or fields or even bookmarks that people have to watch out for, and we don't really believe in doing that. Having said that, when you assemble a document like this using our macros, if you need to update certain things about it, you can of course do it manually, like I changed the date, but some parts of this wouldn't be so easy to do. Like if you wanted to change the letterhead to a different office, not LA, but say San Francisco, or if you wanted to switch your author from Stephen Cooper to somebody else, that's not as easy because there's all this data here. So we do provide that macro that I briefly pointed out earlier, the update correspondence macro. And if you run that in a letter, it doesn't rerun the letter macro. So this is not like running the letter macro all over again. This is just giving you certain options. Like I can switch the office for the letterhead, and I can switch the author. So if it's not Stephen Cooper, maybe it's going to be, well, my senior partner at my firm, which is Susan Patterson. And Susan Patterson, by the way, has 2 different scan signatures. She has a black and white and a color, so I get to choose which one I want. We support that as well. So I'm just changing the office and the author, but all this other data that was used when I built the letter, it gets picked up by the macro, but I don't necessarily have to change it unless I want to. I mean, I could, of course, right? I could say, oh no, let's make this confidential communication instead, right? And so if I make the changes I want and click OK, the macro redoes the letterhead and says, okay, update correspondence complete. And there it is. Now I have the San Francisco letterhead. I have Susan Patterson's information. It says confidential communication here. On the next page, it also says confidential communication in the header, and the signature block has been updated, including even the initials of the author down here. So that's the kind of tool we provide to help you automate updating documents. Let's say, in this case, a letter. We have tools like that. And then I guess the last thing I'll say about the correspondence section is that if you need to do envelopes or labels addressed to these people, then we make it really easy. These names and addresses are sitting in a 2-column table. And so we have this little rule in our system that if you want the envelope macro or the label macro to pick up these addresses, you don't have to select them like I just did. You can just click anywhere in this area. Now, if you have your table grid line showing, you'll see that it's a table structure. If not, if you have that turned off, you won't see borders on the table because it's not printing borders. But if you know that it's a table, then you'll get used to the idea that you can just click down here somewhere and then go up here and run the envelope macro or the firm mailing label macro or even blank Avery labels, and it will pick up the addresses. So if I click on envelopes, it brings up a window with various options. But you'll notice that on the right-hand side, in the recipient list, it already lists Mary Jones and John Winters. So I could literally do nothing but click OK right now, and I'm going to get envelopes addressed to those 2 people. And by the way, let's take a look back at the letter. Notice that we chose to put the fax number and email address of each recipient into the letter underneath each address. But on the envelope, it doesn't appear because our macro automatically omits that information when it's building an envelope because it knows that you don't want the email or the fax number on it, right? And so we look for things like that, and if we find them, we take them out. So that's another detail that you should be aware of. And that what I've shown you is only a little piece of everything in this big macro menu. I showed you the letter macro and the letter signature block, I guess, and then the envelopes. And there are a lot of other macros, but that gives you an idea of what our macros are like and how we handle correspondence in general. So what I'm going to do now in the interest of time is move on to litigation and pleadings and talk about that a little bit. When it comes to litigation and pleadings, I like to bring up the full menu with the L button. Notice that the first button is to create a brand new pleading. But before you do that, someone might use the two buttons underneath it. The first one is called Master Captions, and the next one's called Master Service List. And the idea is that someone at your firm, when the case is first started, when you're going to do the first pleading in the case, someone would create a master caption for the case, and possibly also a master service list with the names and addresses of the parties who are going to be served when you serve your first pleading, right? And so typically someone will go into this feature, master captions, type in a matter number, and then find captions in case somebody's already created one, and on this matter, somebody has. And then they can use these buttons down here to edit a caption, rename it, change the matter number, or create another new caption, because you can have as many master captions as you like for a case, right? Or copy it or delete it. So in other words, this button that I use, the Master Captions button, is all about creating captions for cases and then storing them so that everybody at the firm can create pleadings using the master captions. Not everybody has to go create master captions. Somebody has to once, and then everybody else can just create new pleadings, which is what I'm going to show you. I'm not going to go through the whole master caption process in the interest of time. I want you to see how you assemble a pleading with our system, if that's what you're doing, you know, day in and day out, right? And so when you click the Create New Pleading macro, it asks you if you want to use a master caption. That's the first option and the one that you most often use, even though you do have a few other options for creating your new pleading. If you're using a master caption, which is the typical thing, it will prompt you for the client matter number, which you type in order to find the caption for the case. There might be more than one caption here, but in this case, I just have a single caption. And then if you found the caption you want, you tell it to use that caption to make the new pleading right here, use caption. That brings up this window. Now, this window might look a little differently depending on the court. The caption I selected happens to be for the California Superior Court. So it's a state court caption in California. And there are certain prompts we display for that court. They might be a little different if you chose an appellate court or a court in another state or a bankruptcy court, just depends. But it's largely like this, where what we're asking you for is the details of the pleading you're creating. So the title of the pleading, and possibly you'd fill in these other prompts if they apply. So if the pleading I'm creating is an answer to complaint, for example, that might be what I type, maybe a little more detail. I would probably not fill in any of this other data because it doesn't apply. But if what I'm creating is, say, a notice of motion and motion to do something, so let's just say a motion of Mary Jones to dismiss the complaint, which seems appropriate if we represent the defendant, then I might have other data, like it's filed concurrently with declaration of somebody, Peter Smith, and there's a judge, date, time, and department for the hearing, right? Hearing information. Notice that next to hearing judge, it says, if not same as judge, already in caption, Sue Roberts, Department 9. Okay, this is a very particular detail, but the master caption I selected has in it the name and department number of the judge assigned to the case, because that's something we typically do in California. So if the hearing for this motion is going to be before that same judge, it's telling me I don't have to type the judge's name in again. But if the hearing were going to take place before a different judge, then I could do that. I could fill in a different name there. So that's just a little detail, but those are the kinds of nuances that we build into our system. And so now I'm filling out the judge, date, time, department, and we use it in California. They use a reservation system where they give you a reservation number in some courts, so you can plug that in if you have one. And then when you click OK, the macro is going to grab the master caption for this case, which somebody created previously, and start to fill in all the information. Now, it depends on the court. So let me move this over a little bit. You can see the caption that's being constructed here. And notice that it's in the Superior Court of California. Because of that, we're prompting you to insert a footer that conforms with California rules, where you have to put the title of the pleading in the footer on every page. And this gives you the opportunity to edit the title if you want a shorter version, which is what the court intends. They want an abbreviated and concise title, not a big, long paragraph, right? And then you also have a couple of page numbering options. One of those is grayed out because it's actually not permitted in this particular court, but you can number all pages or all except the first, and then click OK. And then the macro will also prompt you, in this court at least, to insert a signature block when you're creating the pleading. Now, in other courts, like say courts in the central and eastern states of the United States, the signature block is where all the firm information is stored, and it's part of the master caption. But in California, the signature block can be inserted right at the moment that you're creating each pleading, because the firm information is actually at the top of the caption. So we have a lot of variations on what you're seeing right now in this example, because it depends on what the court rules are. It depends on what how the pleadings are constructed in a particular court. But this gives you an example of the kind of thing that will happen when you run our macros to create a pleading. And the California ones are the most elaborate, really. So what it's doing here is showing me a list of all the attorneys, and on the right-hand side, the attorneys that will appear in the signature block. And it automatically picked up 2 attorneys because those are the attorneys that are in my caption. It also, if you look at the bottom, it also picked up the attorneys for defendant Mary Jones line. Where did it get that? It got it from the caption. So you're not having to retype data, because the person who created the master caption already selected the attorneys and specified the party you represent. What you might do is maybe change the date format or check one of these boxes for other options like respectfully submitted, and then click OK. So you're not having to do a lot. That window that came up has a lot of things in it, a lot of prompts and options, but we try to set it up so that it kind of fills it in for you and defaults to a very standard default so that you don't have to do too much. Just check a box maybe and click OK, and then you have a pleading that you can work with. So it's largely driven with lots of options, but with default set up so that it's as fast as possible once you're used to it and once you're doing this. And this is what my caption might look like for this particular pleading. And now I can start typing the content of the pleading itself. So that's, in a nutshell, what our litigation macros are kind of about, you know, creating master captions and then creating pleadings from them. But notice that we have a lot of other buttons in this menu, right? Buttons that let you add a caption to a document after the fact, insert a signature block at any time, insert or update that footer, manipulate the logo, which is the name, maybe name and address in the side of the pleading, table of contents and authorities, which we have to come to later, you know, and then I'll skip around, but there's a proof of service, certificate of service, verification, declaration, macros in this middle section under headings to insert automatically numbered headings for discovery or complaints or answers to complaint or demurs, right? So a variety of different standard litigation headings with numbering, a whole bunch of tools to insert things into pleadings, a separate macro to do statements of facts. So those would be like a statement of undisputed facts or a statement of uncontroverted facts. We have a lot of tools that help you build things into pleadings. And in a demo like this, we don't have the time to go through every last detail. That takes far more time. But I wanted you to be aware that those tools are available. Now I'm going to pass this demonstration to Kathleen in a moment, because she's going to go into a whole nother area of our system that complements the macros that we've been seeing in these menus, right? And what that is the CCC styles and the CCC numbering, these other 2 groups. She'll be focusing on those. In a nutshell, what it amounts to is that when we build a pleading like this one, we will give you a default body text format. This paragraph that looks double spaced with a ½ inch indent on the first line, right? In fact, what we've done is we've applied a paragraph style that has those characteristics so that when you press enter and type, you keep getting the same formatting. But there might be a point where you want to format a paragraph differently than the standard body text. And so Kathleen's going to explain all this, but essentially we have a group called CCC Styles, which gives you menus where you can select a variety of different pre-formatted paragraph styles to automatically format paragraphs very quickly. And we also have a numbering tool if you're going to number headings and subheadings. All right, now I'm going to pass the baton to Kathleen. She is trainer par excellence. She has trained for many years on our system, knows it very well, does a better job than me, I'm sure. And I want to emphasize as I do this that training is really important, because even though you can get to know these macros and run through the prompts and they're not too difficult to use, in fact, there are a lot of details, a lot of tools, and a lot in the style numbering area that might not be perfectly intuitive without somebody introducing you to those features and showing you around. And I think that will become very clear as Kathleen presents. So thanks for your attention. And now I'll pass this to Kathleen.
Thanks, Eric. It was a really great demonstration, and your system is just amazing. I really do love training the system and the fact that it's easy to use, and I know as I'm teaching people how much easier it's going to make their lives. And the interface and the boxes and the prompts are very user-friendly, so it makes training the system and people transitioning to your macros, the whole transition process goes very, very well, even though updating your system or integrating something new can be a little bit frustrating and stressful. This is one of the easiest transitions that I help firms through, and I really enjoy training the system. So Eric did a pretty good job here of explaining to you about the styles, and the fact that what it does is it allows you to quickly and consistently format your documents. Instead of you having to play around with the Microsoft ruler, which tends to like to disappear in newer versions of Word, which is its own little set of frustration, because in Word, seeing the ruler and the indenting and everything is really important. But these styles will help fix problem formats in your document, and will also keep your documents consistent, and will stop you from having to try to redesign paragraphs over and over again. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of an explanation on what you see here and show you how these styles will work for you. So one of my favorite features is actually called Favorite Styles. And when you click Favorite Styles, what you have is a short list of pretty typical formatting that one would need in any kind of document, not just a pleading. So one thing that I want to make you aware of before I go into further detail on the styles and the numbering feature is that everything I'm explaining to you today is going to be usable and work the same way in other types of documents, a memo, a letter, an agreement. So we're using a pleading just because it's a pretty hefty formatted document, and having text line up with the line numbering in a pleading is one of the most difficult things I think people experience with working with Microsoft Word documents. And I'm going to just describe that in a little bit more detail, but let me just start by showing you something about doing a heading in a document. And let's see, yes, okay, so I want to be on the top of page 2 here. So I'm going to just put in a hard return above, and I'm going to turn on the paragraph markers. This is something that I stress and I teach people when working with Microsoft Word in order to be able to really see the formatting that you're getting. So I like to work with them on. You are always able to turn them off if you don't like them, or if you're doing reading and the markers make it difficult for you to flow through and read a document. But for training purposes, I always work with them on. And anytime anybody asks me to help them with a document, if their paragraph markers aren't turned on, it's the very first thing I do. I really can't even concentrate when wanting to do something to help someone without turning those on. So I'm going to show you what the difference between trying to format a paragraph right now as a heading with the manual method versus using a style. So if I were to manually want to make this a centered, bolded, and underlined heading, I would need to either click center or use the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to type in a typical heading for a legal type document, memorandum of points and authorities. And now I'm going to highlight that text. And now I'm going to bold it and I'm going to underline it. And if I wanted to make sure that this heading never separates from the one below it, I then have to go into the dialog box and also choose an option to tell it keep with next. So that's a lot of clicking and selecting in order to make this paragraph bolded, centered, underlined, and keep with next. However, if you look closely, you're going to notice that this isn't actually centered on the page. Why is that? Because the paragraph where I started my formatting is indented. If you'll notice the ruler right here, if I click on it, you'll be able to see that there's like a little drop down line there. That's actually where it's trying to center between there and the right hand side of the page. So not only do I have to choose center, but I also would need to fix the ruler or go into the dialog box in order to undo the indenting. Now I'm going to undo all of that I just did. I'm using the keystroke Control Z here, but you can use the undo button if you wish. Okay, so we're going to go back to where it was before. Now, if I have a style system and I go to favorite styles, it already happens to be right here on my list. It's named exactly what it's going to do. I click heading, center, bold, and underline. And now when I type in my text, you'll see it is exactly what I just chose in about 5 clicks or more. It is a perfectly centered, bolded, and underlined paragraph. So that gives you, I think, the most perfect explanation of where styles can work for you. Why do all that formatting and also have to mess with the ruler as well when you have a one-click option to just go up to this menu and choose exactly what you want? And to take that even a step further, if you wanted that heading to be in the table of contents, look right here on favorite styles is the heading non-numbered TOC. What that means is I'm going to get a heading that is bolded, underlined, centered, and when I run a table of contents, which I will do before the end of my demonstration, that paragraph will also automatically go into the table of contents. So that's just a really perfect way to describe how and show you visually how styles can really work for you. And the favorite styles can be modified by you. So you'll get a few favorite styles to begin with, or if you choose, you can have the developer, Eric or whoever is developing your system, add additional styles as part of the system to your list. But I'm going to show you how you can do that. So underneath the favorite styles is the all styles, which means you can go and pick any style you wish, and you can then also add it to your favorite style. So let's say you need a bullet. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose bullets at 1/2 inch, right? And you're going to see, oh, not that one. I wanted to do the paragraph underneath it. So we're going to do all styles, and we'll do the bullets here at 1/2 inch. Okay, good. So if this is a style that I want to use on a regular basis, it probably wouldn't be used in the pleading, but it doesn't matter because I'm just showing you right now that this is a typical style that people are looking for. Once you've applied it to the document, then you go up to your favorite styles menu and you just choose add to favorite styles. So from here on out, anytime I work in a document, this particular bullet style will be available to me. If I pull up a memo or I create a blank document and I want to do a bullet point list, I can just go to favorite styles and there it is. Now, another great thing about styles is the fact that you don't have to undo and start over when you make a choice that doesn't work for you. Okay, so I didn't really want the bullet style on this paragraph after all, so I don't have to try to undo it and remove the bullet and reformat it. I just simply go back up to my style choices and I pick the style that works for me. In this instance, it's going to be the double-spaced first line indent, which is our typical pleading format. Now, the other thing that is great about paragraph styles is that if you have a formatting problem, right? So for example, I'm going to show you what happens to paragraphs, especially in the pleading, when line spacing that's necessary for the text to line up with the line numbering is not applied correctly. What I just did is I applied Microsoft Word's double space instead of a special formatting, which I'll show you in a few minutes, called exact line spacing, that makes the text line up with the line numbering. So how does this happen? Well, it happens because people don't understand how the line spacing should work, or they'll copy and paste text from an outside document that doesn't have the right formatting in it. So that doesn't matter though, as long as you know what the styles are. You can simply highlight the problem paragraphs, again, go to favorite styles or all styles, and select a style that works for you. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this style again, and you see that it just corrected it. So that should enhance and improve anybody's workflow just by going and using the styles. And although Microsoft does have the styles feature, what it doesn't have are styles that work for your company or your law firm. So the macro package will then be customized, as Eric said, tailored to what your needs are. And you don't have to try to use the not useful default styles that come with Microsoft Word out of the box. These are all customized for you, whatever works for you. For example, if your company likes all the paragraphs to be fully justified, that could be built in so that when you pick a style, it's fully justified. Now, to take this a little bit further about line spacing, and just so you know, in a pleading, what needs to be applied in order for text to line up with the line numbering is the formatting here that's called exact line spacing. In this case, exactly 24 points, which is equal to double spacing. If you use Microsoft Word's regular double spacing, like I showed you in that previous example, what will happen is the text will be double spaced, but it won't stay lined up with the line numbering. Now, the nice thing about the styles is that when you're working in a pleading where the line spacing must be this special exact line spacing, they're smart styles. It knows that when you choose double space or single space styles from either the favorites or the all styles list, that it's going to change the line spacing to match with whatever document you're working in this case, the special line spacing necessary in a California pleading. If you choose double space or single space in a non-pleading document, then it's just regular old Microsoft Word single space and double space. So you can see that these styles are smart styles. They actually know what type of document you're working in. So once you just get to know what styles can do for you, using them and applying them really is just about making choices. And again, I said, if you make a mistake or you pick the wrong style, it's not a big deal at all. You just simply go and make another choice. So let's make one more choice here. I'm going to apply another typical format that we see in legal pleadings that's not the easiest to accomplish in Microsoft Word. There is no keyboard shortcut built into Microsoft Word to accomplish this. And that would be a paragraph that is single spaced, or in the case of the pleading, it's actually exact line spacing. And it is indented a ½ inch on both sides. So you would have to accomplish this if you didn't have a style by moving the ruler or going into the paragraph dialog box. There's no left-right indent keyboard shortcut in Microsoft Word. You can do a left indent, but there's no keystroke to do a right indent. So the other thing that's kind of useful about the way that these styles work is that you'll notice that the paragraph underneath my what would be considered a quote format is now no longer lined up with the line numbering, right? And that's very important in a legal pleading. Well, instead of having to go into the dialog box and make a whole bunch of choices, you can simply go to the end of your paragraph that's in the single space format and do a shift enter. All that does is trick Microsoft Word into thinking your quote has one extra line and your text is now lined right back up with the line numbering. No need to go in and get fancy and try to switch the space before or the space after. And if you're working with your paragraph markers turned on, it's very obvious that that's what was done in order to get the text to be lined back up again. So this is all part of the training that I give to firms. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I've given you, I think, a pretty good demo of what the styles can do for you. And I'm going to show you one other style feature here that's very useful, and that is the body button. So this template, right, the pleading template, has been set so that when you click the body button, it will take the paragraph or paragraphs that you're selecting and turn it back into the standard body format or standard body style for the legal pleading. In this case, it's the 1/2-inch indent with the line spacing set to exactly 24 points. So in a letter, if you were to click the body button, it would give you a 1/2-inch indent, but the text would be single spaced, or whatever your preferred company or firm's default format for a letter would be. You can also actually customize the body button for yourself as well, but this is what's been done for you by default. So I'm now going to move on from describing styles to showing you the numbering system. And for anybody who's ever attempted to do an outline, especially a numbered outline in Microsoft Word, and then on top of that, try to get that text into a table of contents, I am certain that the frustration level has been very high for you over the years. Microsoft doesn't have by default an easy way for you to design a numbering scheme and have it be available to you in every single document. You really have to know how to design a template, and you would then also have to know how to automate it to make it available to you in all of your documents. It requires the knowledge of programming, and it's much more complicated to do than the macro system is going to make it. And you're going to see how simple it is, regardless of the document you're working in, to use the numbering features and to modify them. Now, you still have access with the macro system to the old Microsoft bullets, numbering, and outline numbering. But I do want to show you, when you open these menus, you'll notice that it's actually going to attempt to offer you the option to use the macros. But if you really wanted to go in and try to use Microsoft's useless pre-designed numbering and then try to figure out how to modify it and get it into a nice looking table of contents, you're more than welcome. But my, of course, take on all of this is, why ever use Microsoft's default numbering when you have a macro system that does it for you very simply and straightforward? So I'm going to go ahead and start my document here. So I have, in a legal pleading, you might have a heading, then followed by an intro paragraph, and then shortly thereafter, you want to do a numbered heading to create your intro. And you're going to start by selecting the numbering scheme option. There are several ways to do so, but I'm just going to show you the one way for right now through the menu. So we're going to select a numbering scheme. And what happens is a dialog box with many options for putting numbering schemes into your document are listed. And each time you select a scheme, you'll get a preview of what that numbering scheme is going to look like. Now, of course, I'm going to want to use a pleading scheme, but I do want you to see how many options are already here. So this is a very typical, let's see, I think we'll do paragraph indented, right? That's very typical outline that one might want in any type of document. Memos to the file, an outline. I use outline numbering constantly when doing my training outlines. And this is very typical for me, that I would use this type of numbering. But it's not easy to do without the macros. I had to create my own basically template with my own numbering scheme, and then each time I want to do an outline, I have to go back to my quote unquote template document and reuse that document in order to get the outline that I want. Otherwise, I have to rebuild. I would have to rebuild the outline numbering options that I want each and every time I start a new blank document. I'm not a programmer, I'm a teacher of the macros, so I don't have the knowledge of how to build this and make this happen so easily. One other thing about this numbering scheme list is that what you're seeing right here would be the standard list of schemes that firms get when they purchase the package. But you can also submit specialized requests to have company or firm-wide numbering schemes made available to everybody that are added to this list. So this is just the default that you get. Additionally, you'll notice up here, there's Eric's test scheme showing. And that's just to let you know that each and every person who has the macro package can also build their own personalized numbering scheme as well. So if you don't want your scheme, or your scheme doesn't need to be made available to everybody in the firm, you can build your own scheme as well. For today, I'm going to be choosing the pleading brief motion 2, and I'm going to click apply scheme. it's going to give me a bolded paragraph and a Roman numeral 1. So we'll type in introduction and it's bolded, underlined, auto-numbered, and what I call table of contents ready. You don't have to do anything else to make that paragraph be available for the table of contents. Once you select the scheme, the only thing you need to do from there is to choose the next level of your document, your numbering scheme. So I'm going to start by choosing a level 1, which is going to give me another Roman numeral. But maybe I'm not really ready for a Roman numeral after all. I really wanted the next indented level in my outline. You can apply it with the buttons or with a keyboard shortcut, but what you don't have to do is try to undo it or remove it or get rid of it. You simply need to make another choice, right? So I'm going to put in level 2, and there is my level 2 capital letter paragraph, and I'm going to type in, we'll just make this simple, heading, oops, heading text, my caps lock on, for level 2, or for table of contents, but you get the idea. This is the next level in my outline. And if I want my outline to have this be included in the table of contents, again, I don't have to do anything. I can simply just click the levels and they will, when I show you, you'll see, just go straight into the table of contents. All right, so we're going to do a couple more headings just to demonstrate how it looks and the ease of it. And then I'm also going to be showing you how you can make some changes to the scheme very quickly and easily if the scheme doesn't do exactly what you want it to do. So we'll go ahead and apply here another level 2. And we'll see more text for the table of contents. And then we're going to go ahead and put in some random sampling text here, because maybe after our heading, we're not going to want another auto number immediately. We're going to want some supporting text. And then maybe now I'm ready for a heading. So we'll go ahead and put in the level 1 again, right? And so now I'm going to get another Roman numeral, and we'll say facts. We'll do this in all caps. Facts of the case. And I'm going to press enter, and you're going to notice as soon as you press enter after these headings, you're not getting another auto number immediately. You're getting a paragraph format, a body style format. I'm going to put some more random text in here. And that is because by design, these styles are smart in the pleading, knowing that typically you don't do an auto number followed by an auto number. Usually there's a heading followed by some supporting text and then another heading, and etc. Unlike an agreement or maybe an outline that you're preparing, you might want numbering to happen each and every time you press enter. Well, the reason why it's behaving the way it is right now is I'm in a pleading. So again, the numbering is also smart. We picked a pleading scheme, so it's behaving the way that people would typically work in a pleading. So it would be that you wouldn't want another number automatically. Okay, so let's then also put in a final paragraph here. We'll do a conclusion just so it looks good in our table of contents. And before I run the table of contents, I want to show you the ability to make a change to any style, but in particular here, an outline. So put in one more random paragraph, and then I'm going to show you what to do here to make a change, just because it's really helpful. So if you have headings all throughout your document that are capital letters, bolded, underlined, and then at the last minute, somebody decides that they don't want the formatting to look like that. If you don't have styles, it can be very time consuming to go and make a change to each and every one of those paragraphs in the document. But if you have paragraph styles, and in particular, you have the CCC macro system, you can place the mouse on just one of the numbered headings that you need to change, and you can go to CCC style formatting. Now, don't be intimidated by these buttons. There's a lot of them in here, but they do exactly what they say they're going to do. And are a toggle. So if you click one that doesn't work for you, you can click it again and basically turn it off. So let's just say that for our level 2 paragraphs, we don't want them to be underlined anymore. So if that was the case and you didn't have the styles, you would have to go to each and every instance of the level 2 in your document. And if it's a very long brief, that's going to take a lot of doing, and you would have to remove the underlining over and over and over again. But if you have a style and you place the mouse on the level or the style that you want to change, if I just click the underline button here and I uncheck underline text, you're going to see that all of the level 2s in the document now no longer are underlined. Just like that, click of a button and you're all done. So there's a lot more to understanding numbering and styles than I've even given to you. But what I wanted you to see is some of the common things that people struggle with in Microsoft Word documents, regardless of whether they're a pleading or not, and how if you have styles and numbering and all these macros and the proper training, then you can make the documents work well for you. So let's go ahead now, and I think we'll just run a table of contents and then maybe show you also how we can update the table of contents by making some changes, just because these are easy to do. So I'm going to go back over to the Home tab, because I do need to pull the table of contents button from either the memo menu or the litigation menu. In this case, I'm going to pull it from the litigation menu because I'm in the pleading here. And basically all you need at this point is to have your caption on a page by itself and your mouse on the second page in the document underneath the caption, where what you want is to be able to tell it that you want the table of contents to appear between the caption and the text. So I'm going to click the litigation menu button, and I'm going to just click the table of contents. There's a lot in this dialog box, and we don't need to go through all of that right now. I am simply going to click the OK button, and you're going to see that a table of contents is going to appear in my document below the caption, and underneath it is my text, above it is the caption. So you're going to see it right there, picking up all of my heading levels. So here you have the completed table of contents. And if you need to make a change or add more numbering to the document, that's not a problem. Also, maybe you decided that you wanted the level 2s to have a different format, or maybe you're going to add some level 3s to the document. So let's go ahead and just do that now, just to demonstrate that. And then that will finish up my part of the demonstration. So let's go ahead here and enter in a couple of level 3s. So we're going to click the level 3, which currently gives me an Arabic number, right? And I'm going to add some text so that when I update the table of contents, it also goes in. So we'll say more text, and up. Me and my caps lock key today. Let's turn that off. Okay, more text for level 3. And we're going to do one more right below it, so you can visually see. A lot of times level 3 paragraphs, I will see one right after another in a pleading, unlike the demonstration that I made for you. So this might be like, 2 or 3 bullet points that you wanted to make, input and put into the table of contents. So let's add some text here. And we'll capitalize that because it is a heading. And now maybe we've decided after all that for this level, we don't want to use the Arabic numbering. This would be another time that you would go to the CCC style formatting. And there's an option here to change the number. So I'm going to click change number, and here you're going to see a list of options to use something other than the Arabic number that the outline gave you by default. So let's just, for the sake of example, use the little Roman numerals. And maybe you also want parens in front of the Roman numeral and after the Roman numeral. So you can go and choose that from the drop down to make the change. Now, when I click the OK, do you see that all of them changed? And from this point forward, if I put another level in my document, I'll put in, we're going to go back to the Home tab, and I'll put in a level 3, or I could have used the keystroke Alt 3, and there it is, little Romans. Just like that. This is not easy to accomplish in Microsoft Word without the numbering features that you see here. And like I said, you cannot easily create your own numbering scheme and save it to make it available in every single document in Microsoft Word. You really need to have the be knowledgeable about programming. I myself do not know how to do it. What I do know is I can create a quote unquote template, build in styles and numbering that I want, but as I mentioned before, I have to go back each time to my template and use that same template if I want that scheme. Whereas with the numbering system, you can open up any document and you can use the styles and numbering in the document that has been designed here for you and not have to start with a specific template each time. So it just makes it really easy to use. Now, just to show you the final touches here, we'll want to update our table of contents. I always go back to the table of contents button, but you do also have available to you an update fields in the document right here, this button that says field with the check mark. But when you use the table of contents button, it's also going to ask you if you want to make some changes to the scheme as well. I'm going to just click Update TOC. Doesn't matter where my cursor is in the document. And now I have my table of contents. Okay, so I've added the new levels to my document, and I want to update the table of contents in order to include the changes that I've made and add the extra headings to the table of contents. So in this instance, I would want to go to the litigation menu and I would choose the table of contents button. Now, when I first ran the table of contents, it only had 2 levels in the table of contents. I've added now a level 3. So instead of just choosing the update TOC, I would need to choose the change scheme number of levels. It says exactly what it's going to do for you right here. You're going to go in here and you're going to tell it you want it to include the 3rd level. Now, you may not always want some of the levels to appear. You may create a document with 5 levels, but you only want 1 or 2 of those levels. That's completely possible. You make the choice. In this case, I want to add the 3rd level and update the table of contents. So I'm going to go ahead and click the OK. And now we're going to scroll up, or we're going to see right here in front of us, there's the updated table of contents with the new headings. I also changed the numbering scheme. So instead of using Arabic numbers, I'm using the little Roman numerals. So that is the styles and numbering as briefly as I can make it. I know there was actually quite a bit of content there, but there's so much more to it. But at least you get a great idea of how they work and how easy it can make formatting a document for you. So I'm going to pass it back over to Eric now to just talk a little bit about how he can help you get started with CCC Macro Pro.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks for that great presentation. A lot of detail actually about styles and numbering, which I love because I think that's a big part of our system that really distinguishes what we provide from other people. And it also has implications. And I just want to mention briefly a little bit about that. Essentially, if you like what you've seen, you know, if you feel like, oh yeah, you know, we could learn how to go to favorite styles and apply one of these styles to format different kinds of paragraphs, or yes, we definitely could go to the numbering menu and select numbering schemes this way and then apply the levels the way Kathleen showed you. It's because it's a very efficient way to format documents. But it's also true that if you introduce our product at your firm, you're introducing a whole library of styles that we developed, right? This all styles menu with all the options in it, you know, the many different styles that are available in our system is a whole library that we custom developed. And that means that the documents you create will be formatted using CCC styles as opposed to other styles or direct formatting using words features. And so differently than maybe you formatted documents before and differently than other people. So the implications are that, first of all, you have to want to do it because of the efficiency. You have to train everybody on the use of these features so that they feel comfortable using them, and it becomes very fast and second nature, right? And then you also have to just deal with the fact that your old documents are not formatted this way. Documents you get from other people are not formatted this way. The good news is that, as Kathleen illustrated to you, you can take a paragraph in a document that was formatted some other way, like she did with this heading, and apply a style to it to immediately apply the formatting you want without having to figure out what's wrong with it. So you can fix or convert formatting of paragraphs and headings in documents very easily by just applying the style you want from our system. In addition to that, there's a tab on the ribbon that we provide called CCC Cleanup that has a variety of cleanup tools. And what this really means is, what this is mostly about, is taking documents that are formatted using other formatting, direct formatting, or styles other than CCC styles, and automating the process of going through the paragraphs in the document to apply CCC styles to them. Now, there's a lot to get to know in order to use the style system and also apply the styles to documents that don't already have them. And that's where training is just, to me, of critical importance, so that if you acquire a very robust solution like the one we provide, and we customize it and we tailor it and we get it set up for you the way you want it set up, that you use these tools as effectively as possible. And so you really have to make sure that everyone is properly introduced at whatever level is appropriate to the tools they need. Rest assured, though, that even though there are a lot of options in these menus and a lot of nuances and a lot of details, some people just need to learn how to go and apply a few styles in order to properly format a document. That's all it really takes. And it's only if you're the person charged with, reformatting an entire document or doing more complicated formatting or building and updating tables of contents and all that, that maybe you'll need to learn some more details about this. So there's definitely a population of people that need to learn all the ins and outs in order to be truly effective and use all the tools and save time. And then there are some folks who just need to know enough to format documents properly and consistently with the rest of your firm, but maybe don't have to be experts on every last detail of all the features we provide. But the important thing that I hope you take away from this is that we provide this rich variety of features that enables your firm to assemble documents and format their contents as efficiently and consistently as possible inside your firm. Thank you for your time.
Once again, please send all questions to info@wamsinc.com and we will address them as quickly as possible. Thank you again for joining us today, and thank you to Eric and Kathleen for teaching us all about macros. Our next webinar will be at 10 a.m. on October 28th, and the topic is security compliance while working remotely. We are hearing more and more that this is still an issue in the transition to working from home, and we want to help you all be sure that you are compliant. This is one that you won't want to miss, so keep an eye out for the invite.